Today we will have a pleasure to go through passage for 11th Sunday after Pentecost in LCMS calendar, if you follow liturgical calendars. And the passage would be Isaiah 66 verses 18 to 23, but we will also have a couple words about 24, the last verse in the book. So, as usual, I will say a couple introductory thoughts. We've talked about that a few times, but I want to remind one more time that depending of the scholarly school, the commentaries that you read, they might vary on the question of Isaiah authorship. Some people do believe that the book of Isaiah, all 66 chapters, were not written by one guy. There are few authors who lived in different lands, in different years, and in different religious environment. One of the main arguments behind it is that the beginning of the book, the words in the beginning, or the first part, chapters 1 to 39, are so drastically different from the end part of the book. But in our particular passage, there is great number of parallels which link the beginning and the end together. Let me give you a few, not all, just a few examples. The first example would be if we'll go to the very end, 66:24, we will hear that it is a judgment they who rebelled against me, they will be judged. Okay? But if we will look in chapter 1, verse 2, the book basically starts with a mentioning of those who rebelled against the Lord. Let me read it. Give me a second. So, verse 1 is the vision of Isaiah the son of Amos, which he saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem in the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, Hezekiah, kings of Judah. Hear, O heaven and earth, and give ear, O earth, for the Lord has spoken. Children that I have reared and brought up, they have rebelled against me. So the phrase basically repeat itself. So in 66:24, when we see these people judged, it is a fulfillment of the prophecy of what, or not even the prophecy, but it is a result of how unfortunate relationship between those who rebelled against Yahweh developed. Second example would be in 66:23. In 66:23, we have a worship that would go from new moon to new moon, from Shabbat to Shabbat, or Sabbath to Sabbath. And the problem it's not a problem, this is a restoration of true worship that we see broken or desecrated in 1:13. Bring no more vain offerings, and incense is an abomination to me. New moon and Sabbath and the calling of convocations I cannot endure. Iniquity and solemn assembly. So that's these guys who are rebelled against God. However they worshipped, it was unacceptable to the Lord. But this is restored, and bad guys fall. Okay, so that kind of makes sense. There is another thing is again concerning those rebellious guys. The rebellious guys will end up in the fire, which will not be quenched. So their fire shall not be quenched. The thing is, it was promised to them in the very beginning, in chapter 1, verse 31. Okay? So And the strong shall become tinder, and his work a spark, and both of them shall burn together, with none of the quench them. Okay? There is one more important message that connects beginning of the book. 66:19 mentions so-called coastlands. So far lands. If we will be in the map, okay, so this is Mediterranean Sea, Galilean Sea, Jordan, Dead Sea. So most of the time when we talk about, Judah or Jerusalem, somewhere over here, this is Northern Kingdom, north, south, Kingdom of Judah. So when we talk about coastlands, and in verse 19 and 20, there will be mentioning of some lands, even Tarshish would be mentioned. Usually, there are few ideas where Tarshish, for example, is, and it goes from Tars, so in present Turkey, to Carthage, and even to the end of Spain, this region, if we believe this is the Mediterranean Sea. So, however far it is really far for ancient Israelites. So this is the coastlands. But the thing is, it is not the first time when we talk about coastlands. If we'll go to 11:11, that's where we see the theme of coastlands started. And then it goes actually through and even picked up in 49:1. So the next one, and probably final for today, as I said, this is not all of them. This is not all the themes, or this is just the basically word parallels, but thematically it's the number of parallels is even greater. So 66:20 tells that the other nations will come to the holy mountain. And this is a great deal. That theme makes a great deal in verses 2 and 3. Okay? It shall come to pass that in the later days that the mountain of the house of the Lord shall be established as the highest of the mountains, and it shall be lifted up above all the hills, and all the nations shall flow to it, and many peoples shall come. So different nations and nationalities will come and say, "Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may teach us his ways, and that we may walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem." Okay, this is a great song, very popular in Jewish liturgic circles. Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah udvar Adonai mirushalayim. So that these, again, what is promised is halfway, let's say, fulfilled, because it is stated here, but the full fulfillment, as we will see, we can enjoy, or we can see the full fulfillment of that in book of Revelation. We'll talk about that later. So with these few introductory remarks, let us go into the text and enjoy the pleasure of the last words of Isaiah. So first I will clean the board, but first I will basically read verse by verse, and will comment on what is not obvious. First of all, so 66:18. For I know their works and their thoughts. It looks like this phrase, "for I know their works and their thoughts," is actually the end or conclusion of the previous verse, because it talks about those who sanctify and purify themselves to go to worship, yet they eat unclean food, and they do abomination in their hearts, and Lord knows about them. So whatever whatever their attempt to present themselves as pure ones is not really successful. What is more important is the second part of verse 18, which kind of stands different. So there shall come, there will be time, it's coming, that I will gather all nations and all tongues. So it's a combination of nations excuse me, and it's languages. So we will stay with tongues, but you need to understand it's not lips. The difference should be made between two important words. One of them is tongue as a language, so the way how people communicate with themselves. You know, when I talk to you, I use, hopefully, an understandable English language. But when people approach God, they do not use their tongue, they use their lips, as we find in Psalm 51. In Psalm 51, we have this wonderful phrase that, give me a second, verse 15, okay, so, okay, which is actually language. So parallel is 51:15 Psalm. I hope it's understandable that it's letter C. O Lord, open up my lips, and my mouth will declare your glory. So here, in this one, we have two different things. We have lips to worship God, and we have mouth or tongue to talk to others about God's glory. Okay? So here in 66:18b, that's what it is. So people with different nationalities and different ways to talk about life, because every language constitutes their own, how can I say, paradigm to understand the world and to create the worldview. So people with different understanding of life will be brought together. God will gather them together. And the reason why he will do it, it's actually, again, brings us back to Psalm 51. The reason for that is, and they shall come and see my glory. Okay? So the whole reason is to give people understanding the glory of the Lord. And isn't that what we have in Gospel of John, chapter 1, in his wonderful prologue, when he says that we have seen his glory, the glory of the one who comes from God. So that's about verse 18. There is an important thing. We go further. Verse 19, and I will set a sign among them. We are not really told what kind of sign it is in chapter 66, but there is the same word and same idea when Lord gives a sign. And that sign is, so, verse 19. If we talk about sign, we need to remember chapter 7, verse 14. So the sign that Lord himself will give to people is what? The sign that he will give is, therefore, Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, and we know the verse. the virgin will conceive and bear a son, and he shall be called Emmanuel, or God is with us. So in the beginning of the book, we have promise of the sign, and then therefore by the end, we are reminded that this sign will be given, and that's what Matthew in chapter 1 builds up his theology on when he says that Jesus was a fulfillment of this wonderful prophecy. Verses 20 and 21. Okay, so she shall bear a son, and you shall call his name Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins. Okay, so the whole nativity story is based on promise and reminder of the fulfillment of the same promise. And then it is also important to see that in verse 19, so there will be a sign, and from them, so there will be people gathered together from all the nations. From them I will send survivors to the nations. Okay? To Tarshish, Pul, Lud, who draw the bow, to Tubal and Uval, or Jabal, to the coastlands far away, that have not heard of my fame or seen my glory, and they shall declare my glory among the nations. So it looks like it can be compared, next few verses, can be compared with the pulse of a heart. Okay? So there is something going on. We have kind of like the mountain of the Lord can be compared with a heart. And then you have a group of people who go in, okay? And this is the verse, let's say verse 18. And then in 19, they are sent out, okay, to gather other ones, okay? And these guys, the reason why these guys are brought in is to see the glory. And those who go out, that's the whole point for them to go out, is to reveal the glory of the Lord. And it kind of continues. It kind of continues because in verse 20, and they shall bring all your brothers from all the nations as an offering, we will talk about that, to the Lord on horses and chariots and in litters and on mules and on dromedaries to my holy mountain, to my holy mountain Jerusalem, says the Lord, just as the Israelites bring their grain offering and so on and so forth. So they will gather these guys and bring them in. Okay? Why? They are brought in as an offering, particular offering, but this particular sacrifice, again, one more time, constitutes the glory of the Lord. Okay, now, two things about verse 20. First of all, there are 5 things which are mentioned here. Is they will come on horses, okay? They will come in chariots, okay? They will come on in wagons, on mules, and dromedaries is basically the Arab one-hump camels. Okay, so we have a high society positioning people. We have military guys because the chariots are used as basically the ancient chariot is like a tank. Okay, I probably need to stand this way. Yeah, I'm still not used to this wonderful microphone stuff, but somebody said that the quality of sound improved. So we have these guys. We have those who can afford, what I would say, kind of like a U-Haul trucks, okay, on wagons, or wagons. Okay, so those who come on mules are a little bit poorer, most likely, but they can afford an animal, so they just not only walk, but they can put some of the stuff on the back of the mule, and they can ride on camels. So all these great transportation possibilities of the ancient world will be used for coming to the mountain of the Lord, because the direction of the movement is to the mountain of the Lord from wherever place they go, from south, east, west, north, doesn't matter, from everywhere they would come. Probably in today's language we would say that they will fly on private jet planes. They would use their Boeing tickets. They would come on ships. They would come on trains. They would ride their own vehicles just to come to the mountain of the Lord. And then there is very interesting thing is, as I said, in verse 20, and then it is kind of picked up in 21. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's all in verse 20. The same type of sacrifice is mentioned twice. It is grain offering, and we are talking about word in Hebrew minha, and to understand it we need to go into Leviticus 2. We will not go there for too much details. The main thing about this, it's a grain offering, can be done in three ways. So the grain can be kind of like boiled, make into porridge, can be fried, or can be baked. Okay, however you do the grain, you crush the seeds and you transform it into something better, something more glorious, because any cake is better and tastier than the seed itself. Okay, the thing is, this particular offering is when the worshiper brings it to the house of the Lord, and then he offers it to the Lord, and yet it is shared between the Lord and the priest. Worshipper doesn't get anything out of that. He doesn't get a portion of this offering. That's what I mean. It is shared between, again, Lord and the priest. In this, let's put it this way. Knowing this, it is very interesting to see verse 21. Again, we have more nations, more people, okay, from different tongues, and I will mention important thing in a second. Lord will set up some of them as, verse 21, and some of them I will take, just a regular verb take, I will take for priests and Levites, says the Lord. The like a greatness of this verse cannot be overestimated, though sometimes it just slips from our attention. The thing is, before you have to be born into the family of priests to become a priest. If you want to be a Levite, you have to be from the clan of Levi, okay, one of the sons of Jacob. Very rare, we do have examples when people were adopted into their family, and therefore, being again part of the family, they could serve as priests or Levites. Probably parade example would be Samuel. If you want to read his story, you go to first book of Samuel, chapter 1 and 2. He was not born as a priest, yet he was adopted by the high priest as a son, and therefore he was able to perform priestly duties. But here, Lord says that to serve in his house, he himself will take some of these guys from different nations, different languages, as priests and Levites. Now, what I should have said before is importance of these nations and tongues. We need to go a little bit further into the Bible to see the fulfillment of this into Revelation, particularly chapter 7, which has two parts. Verses 1 through 8 and 9 through 17 tell us, let's go there. So, Revelation, in the very end of the Bible, we have chapter 7. Where are my glasses? Here we go. In verses 1 through 8, we are still talking about number of people who surround the throne of the Lord. And it is definitely, most likely, definitely symbolic number. You have 12 tribes with 12,000 of members in each. Therefore, you come up with 144,000. Okay, it's not a mystical number. It just tells that the roundness, the completeness of those who would come from tribe of Judah, from tribe of Reuben, Gad, Asher, Naphtali, and so on and so forth. Okay? But it doesn't stop there. Then John sees another group that surrounds with a bigger circle those numbered guys. And after this I looked, verse 9, and behold, a great multitude that no one could number. So you have numbered, people from Israel, and the great group that cannot be even numbered from every nation, from all the tribes and peoples and languages. So there are four characteristics here, but it's basically the same idea. So whatever nationality, whatever ethnicity, whatever ethos, whatever, cultural paradigm you're raised in, the point is for you to see the glory of the Lord, that these guys who already have seen the glory would come and share with you, and then you go in to the holy mountain and you will be offered as a meal, as a grain meal offering, and maybe by this you will be taken into a priesthood to serve the Lord. So this is really great statements. So last two verses. 4. Okay, so this is kind of like a statement of what will happen. And then there are, I would compare two main seals under the wheel are. Verse 22. 4. As the new heaven and the new earth that I make shall remain before me, says the Lord, so your offspring, literally seed, and your name will remain. Okay? So first of all, the new heaven and new earth is created. Okay? So we are in verse 22. New heaven and new earth are created, quote unquote, in 65:17. Lord promises, for behold, I create new or renewed heavens and new or renewed earth, and the former things shall not be remembered. The reason is that in one more parallel with the past is, if we go into chapter 1, verse 2, the two main witnesses that Lord brings against Israel is heavens, the old heavens, and earth. Hear, or heavens, and give ear, or earth, for the Lord has spoken. My children have rebelled, that I reared and brought up, they have rebelled against me. We talked about that. So it's a heaven and earth, the the establishment of the world for Israelites in those days. Somehow it doesn't work. So Lord creates new, and this new will be, basically, we believe, will be forever. Okay? And as it is forever, the two things, they will stand forever also. From here, we have two promises, the promise of seed and the promise of name, which brings us back to the story of Abram, that we know as Abraham, for his name was changed. If we go into Genesis chapter 12, that's what he was promised at first. He was promised first a great name. Let me read it. 12, 1 through 3. Now Lord said to Abram, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I show you. And I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great. And so you will be a blessing. Then a few years later, he hears another promise, or reinforcement basically of another promise of the offspring. 15, 4 and 5. Genesis 15, 4 and 5. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him. This man shall not be your heir. That they talk about the Eliezer of Damascus. He shall not be your heir, your descendant. Your very own son shall be, or actually seed shall be your heir. And he brought him and said to him, look toward heaven and number the stars, if you can number them. And that's how many seeds you will have. So we talked about that a few weeks ago, if you want to follow with Genesis 15. But that's the promise, and that's the promise we have in Jesus. His name is great, and he is the promised seed. That's what Paul based his theology on. And the importance of that is brings us to the next one. It is from new moon to new moon, and from Shabbat, from Sabbath to Sabbath, from Shabbat to Shabbat, all flesh shall come to worship before me, declares the Lord. So that the worship will be from new moon to new moon, so monthly and even weekly. Okay, not from feast to feast. You know, like one pastor had a kind of sad joke. The importance is it is important for people to come to church on a regular basis. So my people come to church regularly on Christmas and Easter. So that's what he's talking about here. The people will come to worship not only on great occasions, but they will maintain their relationship with the Lord on a regular basis. During the month, with every week worship service, how it is regularly as it should be. And importance is, again, all flesh is called basar in Hebrew, which includes Israelites on one hand and all the other nations and the people from different tongues and with different habits, with different ethnicity. They all will come to the mountain of the Lord and worship there regularly, and they will see their glory and then come out and bring others in. Stay blessed.